Hi everybody, my name is Elizabeth and I'm a librarian here at the LSC Tomball Community Library. Welcome back to Baking is Baking, the series where we only sometimes ever bake anything, but where we are always talking about food. Today we are actually going to be baking something, as I'm going to try to replicate a food that I have been nostalgic for ever since I studied abroad in the UK in college, the Greggs vegan sausage roll. For the uninitiated, Greggs is a popular British fast food franchise that specializes in pasties, or savory pastries usually filled with meat, but which can also be filled with other savory fillings. The top billing on their menu is absolutely the sausage roll, and although I got hooked on the meat-based version when I was studying abroad, I don't eat meat anymore, and so I have been so curious to try the vegan alternative that they've recently added to their menu. Luckily, I don't have to book a plane ticket and go all the way across the pond to try it myself, because Becky Keene, our young adult librarian, has been kind enough to share with me her dupe for the Greggs vegan sausage roll. So we are going to try that today together. Before we get started though, I am gonna hand things over to Becky, who's gonna tell us a little bit more about sausage rolls as well as Britain's relationship to veganism. So take it away, Becky.
Hi, my name's Becky and I'm the young adult librarian here at the Tomball Library. I'm originally from Manchester in the north of England, and if there's one thing that us Brits love to eat, it's carb-heavy snacks. Toad in the hole, Scotch eggs, jam roly-poly, and yes, I did just pick the ones with the funniest sounding names. Sausage rolls are another carb-heavy food that we love to eat, but what are they? Well, they're a sausage filling, surrounded by flaky pastry, and they taste a lot better than that description made them sound. Veganism is on the rise. Veganism is essentially the practice of avoiding the use of animal products wherever possible. Veganizing traditional foods or using accidentally vegan ingredients is one way to make a vegan diet accessible, sustainable, and affordable. These vegan sausage rolls are easy to make, cheap, and most importantly, delicious.
All right, thank you so much for that information, Becky. So let's get started on our vegan sausage roll. Making our vegan sausage roll is fairly simple and only needs a few ingredients. First, we need vegan sausage. Sausage is one of the most successful meat substitutes, in my opinion, since it's so heavily seasoned to begin with. So even if you aren't a vegan or vegetarian, I would recommend giving it a shot as an easy way to eat less meat. Becky recommends the Light Life Gimme Lean Veggie Sausage, so that is what we are going to use. She also mentioned that you can use veganized versions of other traditional pasty fillings like chicken and mushrooms, beans and cheese, or steak and gravy. But she did caution to make sure that whatever you use needs to be pretty dry to keep your roll from getting soggy. From here, I've made a couple of changes to Becky's recipe based on what was available. Part of cooking is being creative with what you have to still achieve the result you're looking for, so consider this my twist on Becky's recipe. The first twist is that I wasn't able to find vegan puff pastry at the grocery stores I went to. Becky suggested the Pepperidge Farm puff pastry sheets, which I couldn't find. Instead, we're going to be using some phyllo dough. Like puff pastry, phyllo dough is still going to be nice and golden brown when we bake it and is going to be even flakier, so I think it is still going to be delicious. The second major change is going to be that Becky recommends adding sage to your sausage. I realized at the last second that I didn't have any, so I'm going to approximate the earthy, peppery, aromatic flavor of sage by using rosemary and thyme instead. Thyme is actually related to sage and will help bring sage's woodsy flavor, whereas rosemary is going to bring the savoriness. With all of that out of the way, I think it's time to actually make our vegan sausage rolls. The first step to making your vegan sausage roll is to plan ahead. We need to let our phyllo dough or puff pastry thaw out to room temperature so that we can work with it. For this, you're going to follow the package directions of your dough. This one recommends letting it thaw in the refrigerator overnight and then setting it out to thaw to room temperature 2 hours before you need to start working with it. With that in mind, I would recommend setting this dough out when you get up in the morning for a late lunch or right when you get home from work for a late dinner. When you're ready to start cooking, we're going to start with preheating our oven. Go ahead and set it to whatever the package of your puff pastry or phyllo dough calls for. This says to preheat the oven to 400, but then to lower it to 375 right before adding your dish, so that is what we are going to do. Next, we are going to combine our sausage with the sage or whatever spices you're using. I'm also going to throw in some salt and pepper just because, why not? Because I have those on hand and they just make everything better. Break apart the sausage with your hands or a spoon if you prefer, like I do, and get everything nicely mixed together. Once your dough has thawed, roll it out on a floured work surface. The phyllo dough I bought came pre-floured, but if you're working with puff pastry, you are definitely going to want to add more to keep it from sticking to your work surface. Place your sausage mixture in a line down the center of your pastry and press it down to flatten it. Next, fold your pastry over the top of the mixture and seal it on the edges. From here, you can cut your sausage rolls into whatever size you prefer. From what I remember, the sausage rolls at Greg's are roughly the size of your hand, but I also have tiny hands, so your sizes may vary. I've also seen people who make the sausage rolls really small, which would make them ideal appetizers for a party or just for comfortable eating while you binge your favorite British TV show. However, if you're like me and are looking for a meatless main for your Thanksgiving, you could also make one big sausage roll, which would come out similarly to a vegan beef Wellington. I may revisit that myself next week. Next, either prick or score the tops of your sausage rolls. This will let steam out while they bake, which will keep them from exploding like pizza rolls do when you bake them in the toaster oven. Brush the tops with olive oil so that we can ensure a gorgeous golden brown crust. With that done, simply place your sausage rolls in the oven and bake according to the directions on the package for your pastry dough. This has to bake between 18 and 30 minutes, depending on your filling. Because this doesn't include any actual meat, we don't have to be overly cautious about how thoroughly cooked our filling is. So I set my timer to 25 minutes, which worked out pretty much perfectly. We've now got our finished vegan sausage rolls. They don't look exactly like the Greg's sausage rolls, but they do taste just as good. To complete the British experience here, I'm going to have some Ribena with my sausage rolls. Ribena is a type of drink that is very popular in Britain called squash. Squash is basically just a concentrated drink syrup, usually made from fruit, that is diluted with water to make a finished drink. Ribena specifically is made from black currants, which is a common fruit flavor in British drinks and candies, but for some reason hasn't really caught on here. I think it's delicious, and in my opinion kind of tastes midway between a plum and a raspberry. I got hooked on the stuff while I was living in Scotland, so to bring a little Texas into this very British meal, I'm going to dilute my Ribena syrup with some Topo Chico. Now, once you've got your meal ready, you could enjoy this with some of the great movies I recommended in my screenshots episode on British movies, which I've linked in the description of this video, but you may want to read something instead. If that is the case, I recommend Colin Spencer's book British Food: An Extraordinary Thousand Years of History. It's not a cookbook like what I usually recommend on this show, but it is an absolutely fascinating, nuanced look at a type of cuisine that often finds itself maligned by Americans. British food has a lot of gems that many of us aren't aware of, so this will be a great primer for you to find out what you may have been missing out on. You can check it out from the Harris County Public Library. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Baking is Making. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter so that you never miss a future episode of Baking is Making or any of our other great online programs. And be sure to let me know if you try this recipe or you have meatless versions of some British classics squirreled away that you would like to share with everyone. Another huge thank you to Becky for giving me this recipe and helping out with the video, and I will see you all next time. Bye!